Hello everybody, in this video I'll be showing you how to use BoneToPix to convert 3D models into smooth, dynamically lit pixel art animations. You can see an example of that right over here. If you don't already have BoneToPix, you can get it at the link in the description on this webpage. So first things first, I've got an empty Unity project opened over here, and the first step is we're going to want to import the BoneToPix package. So for that you're going to want to go over here under Window, and open the package manager. If you're not already signed in, it's going to prompt you to sign yourself in, so I'm just going to go ahead and click that right now. It's going to open a little web page here. And with that, you're going to be logged in after you enter your login information, and is going to load a bunch of packages. So you're going to want to go over here and select My Assets under Packages, and you're going to get a list of packages that you can install. I'm going to select BoneToPix from this one. I'm going to make sure to update it. It's going to take a little moment to download all the files. If this is your first download, it's going to take a little bit longer. And then, now that we are at the latest version, we're going to click Import. It's going to prompt us with all the files that we can import. You can choose to only keep specific parts of the package. In this case, I'm going to just go ahead and import everything. Now it's going to be downloading and importing everything into the project, and in a few moments you're going to get a new folder over here called White Limbo Games. I'm going to close the package manager now, and if we go into the White Limbo Games folder and into BoneToPix, we will have a few folders to choose from. So from then on, we're just going to want to go into Demonstration Assets, into Preview Scenes, and just open this one, Medium Detail Model. This is going to give us a test model that we can convert and test out BoneToPix with. So I'm going to go ahead and click 2D over here so I can get the 2D perspective in the scene view. And now we can see a little model of UnityChan here, the mascot of Unity. Over here on the left side in the hierarchy, you can see a few components: the UnityChan model, a camera, and a light, and of course the BoneToPix converter. If we click on the BoneToPix converter and we look over here, over to the inspector on the right side, we're going to see a bunch of settings and a couple of buttons down here. The main settings I need to worry about, first of all, the conversion target. In this case, it is already selected as UnityChan. This is going to be the model that you want to convert. In this case, we're just going to convert UnityChan since she's already here, but you can do this with pretty much any model. Just import it into Unity, drag it into the scene, and make sure to select the reference to it over here under Conversion Target. There's a reference to the settings. We're going to talk about that later. There's a reference to the camera that we're going to be using. This is going to be the only camera that we have in the scene, the main camera. Then a couple of settings for cell width and cell height. That is going to be the size of a sprite cell for our converted sprite. In this case, I'm just going to leave it at the default of 64 by 64. So the translation here is bigger numbers here are going to be pixel art sprites with more pixels, of course, and smaller ones are going to be smaller sprites with fewer pixels in a more retro style. There's also a setting for drawing the outline. You can check it on for now. And then there's a few settings for palette type. As you know, pixel art, generally speaking, uses a limited palette of colors in most styles, and BoneToPix accounts for that. We've got a couple of options. One of them is we can just auto-generate a palette based on the colors of the model. BoneToPix is just going to pick some colors that are likely to be good at representing the model you're converting. You can also choose to not restrict the palette, and then you'll get a sprite with a lot of colors, or you can enter your own palette in the form of a little 2D texture with all the colors that you want to use. In this case, I'm going to just use auto generate, And I'm going to leave the number of colors that we're using at 16 for this one. You can play around to get more or fewer colors depending on your preference. And I encourage you to experiment with every model you're converting. And then we've also got a setting for lighting type. The flat color plus normal maps is going to be the type of lighting that you want for dynamic lighting. That's gonna work together with the included pixel light shader, and you're gonna have a sprite that is dynamically lit and properly responds to light sources in your scenes inside of Unity. Besides that, there's also an option to just bake the lighting directly into the sprite. So if you want a game that does not have dynamic lighting, this is what you would likely be using. Or just generic lighting, which also bakes the lighting into the sprite, but instead of a sort of a cartoony, cel-shaded, pixel-arty style, it just does a more quote-unquote realistic, smooth lighting style. Alright, that's all the main settings on the main converter. We're going to talk about the advanced settings a little bit later as well. And then we've got a couple of buttons over here. There's begin converting animation and convert single frame. I just click on begin converting animation. You can see the little Unity Chan model is now playing through all of our animations and changing her material. And there we go. We're done converting. This is the full Unity Chan model animated with all of her little animations. So we can see we've got a little run animation, we got a little jump animation, a little losing animation where she's grabbing her head. And what opened up over here is the palette editor that is included in BoneToPix. So at the end of every conversion, you're going to see this, and you're going to be able to edit the color palette of the sprite. In this case, we can see we kind of have a lot of colors, and a lot of them are pretty similar. See, this little beige here is very similar to this one. It's a lot of different beiges of a very similar type. So we can go ahead and edit that palette, start removing some of those colors. We can also add colors if we want to, modify any of the colors. Let's get rid of one of these blues as well. You can get the palette much lower, much fewer elements. And we can also modify. You can see all of the changes are going to be reflected over here in the preview live. Let's say I want to take her shirt and make it a slightly different shade of blue. You just go over here, click on the blue color, we just change it around. You can see how that's changing around live. You go with this sort of dark blue color. Maybe we want to go a little more orangey on the socks. Maybe a bit darker as well. Maybe we can take the hair color and make it a little more orangey as well. Maybe take her skin and make her a little bit more tan. And so on. Down here you're going to have a few controls. You can stop animating and maybe go through your frames one by one. If you're animating, you can also choose the FPS that you're animating at. So let's say we want to halve that, we'll go to 15 frames per second. You can see it's animating quite a bit slower now. Or we can go to 5, and again, that's quite a bit slower again. And then we got a couple of options for saving our modify sprite. So if you just click save and overwrite, it's going to overwrite the main texture. If you click save changes to a new texture, it's going to create a new texture in case you want to keep the original and your new one. And you can go on and make multiple variations however you please. So I just click save and overwrite in this case, and then we can just go ahead and close the palette editor. Now down here you're going to see a little preview sprite that's gotten automatically generated based on our generated sprite sheet and normal map. It has the pixel light shader applied to it. You can see it over here on the preview material. This is using the included pixel light shader. You can see this responds to lighting. If we go to the created preview material, we can also play around with the settings. So let's go through each of them in turn. We got our main texture, that in this case is not actually used, is just using the sprite component on our object. Got a normal map, which is the generated normal map. This is the lighting information that tells the sprite how it should look from different angles of lighting. The cell shading lookup texture, which is going to define the steps in your visual lighting. The light intensity factor, you can see if we increase that, we get more dramatic lighting, it's more intense. If we lower it, we get softer lighting. The universal light intensity factor, this is the sort of ambient light component. You can ignore this field, generally speaking. This is just going to be 1/your asset pixels per unit, which is something that you will generally define for your entire project. You can also use an ignore map and use dithering on the lighting. You can click it on and off. You can see the effect over here. For some models, it's going to look better with dithering. For others, it's going to look better without. In this case, I think this particular model is relatively simple, so it looks a little bit better without the dithering. You can also have a little lookup pattern for your dithering. There's a few included in BoneToPix, so you could change those around. Let's try the 4x4. There's the 8x8 as well. Those are going to be more obvious on bigger sprites, generally speaking. So the dithering power. You can see if we go really high on that, our sprite just looks like a little checkerboard. If we go lower, is going to be a lot more subtle. That's about it for the main settings on the pixel light shader. Now, if we go back to the converter over here, we also have a convert single frame button. If we go ahead and import a couple of textures over here, and we define them as sprites, we apply those changes. Now, if we go ahead and import those into the scene, make them a little bit smaller, go 0.1. We just frame the tree together with a little kitten. Then we grab our camera, we just drag it over here. Make this a little bit smaller. Go to converter and let's go ahead and go to 32 colors. And we click convert single frame. We're just going to convert one frame of this entire scene, however we framed it with our camera. So if we go under BoneToPix output, see we've got our previously created folder for our animation. And we also have our folder for the single frame. And we've also got our generated single frame. We change this to a sprite. We just drag it into the scene. We got our little converted tiny version, pixely version of this little scene. A lot of the colors here went to the tree, so maybe we should have gone to 64 colors instead, and we got something different. We also just keep clicking convert single frame, we'll get a bunch of different generated palettes. You can see a lot of them are kind of greenish. This one also looks quite promising. Got a little bit of purple on that cat. We could also just go ahead and increase the size of that sprite. Maybe we go 128 and convert. It's going to be a different folder here for the 128s. These are 64 colors as well. This one's starting to get pretty close. And we can also, of course, go ahead and do it with one thing at a time and have a single palette for the whole thing. And we go back to 64 for the kitten. We frame it a little bit bigger. And we go to maybe 32 colors for that. Click convert. It's going to go just back over here. We got a little kitten. It's looking pretty cute. Let me try 16 colors as well. This one's looking pretty good as well. That's just 16 colors as well. Right, that's about it for the single frame conversion. And let's also take a quick look over here. Under advanced settings, there are a whole bunch of other settings that you can play around with. These are mostly for the nerdier people. You got handy things like converting the color of your outline. Maybe we want red outlines on our stuff. If you do that and we go back here, see we got a couple of converted sprites with red outlines. All of these are explained in more detail under the documentation folder. You'll find that just under BoneToPix documentation. And you've got documents explaining all the advanced settings, how to use the palette editor and how to use it as a standalone, how the shaders work and what each of their fields are doing, and all the other handy info if you want more details on how any of this works. There's also an invite link to our Discord server, so if you have any other questions, you can come over there and join us in the help channel. Try to get the questions pretty soon. And that's about it. On the Discord, you'll also find a channel for sharing your work. If you'd like to share some of the things that you've created with BoneToPix, I really enjoy seeing what people come up with, so please join us there and show us what you've come up with. Thank you for watching this tutorial, and I will see you sometime soon. Goodbye.